All right, well, good evening, everyone. We were talking about how we will have some storm chances moving in around the dinner time frame for our Saturday, and we'd be ready to do cut-ins whenever necessary. And we're getting on or starting on right on track around 5:24 here in downtown Tupelo Station. We're taking a look at the severe thunderstorm warning. While primarily the storm is out there across the state line, pretty much in the Memphis retro area, we are not dealing with that yet here in Mississippi, but we have this warning downstream, and that's going to allow us to kind of start to see that warning, just give everybody a heads up as we start to anticipate some of these stronger storms across the state line. I'll start off by talking about our threats. Once again, we are not talking about a tornado threat tonight, so if that brings immediate ease and comfort, I hope that does. We're talking about wind again, which honestly, some of these could be very gusty. The potential for maybe 75-mile-per-hour winds is a possibility with today's setup, and also the potential for some hail. So we're kind of going through what we've been going through the past few days, unfortunately, but we've done an excellent job getting through the past few days. Y'all have done fantastic, so we can do it again tonight, and we'll make sure to keep you guys updated on that. So we're dealing with, again, the energetic and disruptive storms. They're just going to cause those light shows as the sun begins to set, and quite a few rumbles, pretty much nonstop as we head into our evening hours. So we can take a look at our threats. I mean, you can already tell a little bit further out across the Mississippi River, getting closer towards Tunica County, where some of those darker returns are technically a little bit brighter with those pink and purple showing up, so picking up on some of those hailstones aloft. So we want to keep our eyes on that here. Let me look on this screen, make sure I have the chat pulled up. That way I can answer any questions you guys have, because I know, especially at the top, we're going to want to know everything going on. So for us here in North Mississippi, we'll zoom out again before we continue to kind of break down what's ongoing. You can see quite a bit of color here in our region. We're dealing with some of these severe thunderstorm watches. That is for you guys out here kind of in these green counties outlined. So that will continue all the way until 10 o'clock later on tonight, as far south, or excuse me, east as Prentiss. So not quite for you guys out there in Tisch, Itawamba, or Monroe just quite yet. We're just dealing with those severe thunderstorm warnings as we're expecting some of these storms to continue crossing the Mississippi River between the 5 to 6 o'clock hour, as we're seeing right now. And we're going to see the coverage of these rain changes continue to increase and stick with us throughout the next few hours. Again, not discussing anything tornadic. We are not dealing with that tonight. Wind and hail continues to be the main concern. And thankfully, the flooding concern, or potential for flash flooding, not quite as high as we've seen the past few days. So hopefully we won't have to deal with much of that heading into our overnight hours. But again, for flash flood prone areas, I know some neighborhoods in Starkville where we can get a heavy thunderstorm and people just have to stay put as the drainage system just really struggles in that area. Just make sure to stay weather aware as we head into the next few hours ahead, and we'll make sure to keep you guys updated as we continue taking a look. So speaking of taking a look, let's go up here towards those severe thunderstorm warnings that have been issued. We actually just saw another one get issued just north of this initial warning that we went live for, starting to cross into our coverage area right around that 5:25 mark. So I wanted to make sure to hop on here and give you guys an update, as y'all's phones are probably letting you know that y'all are under that warning. That is set to expire at around 6 o'clock for you guys in Marshall and DeSoto County. We also have that other warning just north set to expire around 6:15. So again, 15-minute interval right there as we'll continue dealing with these showers and storms. So let's take a look at our threats here. With our Memphis radar, we want to make sure we get the best look at that here. We're going to deal with a lot of green and kind of pink purple. Yet again, that has been the story the past few days as we've dealt with this kind of weather setup to allow us to see wind potential and the potential for some hail. You guys have done an excellent job submitting those reports to letting us know what those storms have been capable of. Kind of expecting a similar setup today. So we'll make sure to keep our eyes on that here, and I'll try to kind of juggle both between our big monitor on the other side of our studio and over here on the wall. But we're dealing with some of those lighter shades of pink and purple starting to creep in, showing that hail is definitely a possibility. Again, these are peak impact, so the absolute worst case scenario on what we could see here with these storms. So if we were to kind of pixel these, and honestly, let me just turn off the lightning again, because that is going to cover up a lot of it here so we can get the best visual. We're talking about that second level, so maybe up to an inch in hail, worst case scenario. But you will notice up there towards Lakeland, Tennessee, a little bit darker, so probably an inch and a half potential. Now, that making it all the way to the surface is probably definitely a struggle at this moment in time, but we are probably seeing some hailstones kind of aloft in that storm, and we'll eventually start to drop some of that here. So we're going to want to keep our eyes on that severe thunderstorm warning as it gets closer and closer. And I did not bring my phone over here, so let me walk off screen real quick to grab that so I can kind of keep all the different chats open and make sure I don't miss any important messages. Should I say that? Might have lost my phone. There we go. It's over here. Can't go too far away from it. Want to make sure I don't miss anything important for you guys to keep y'all updated. I already got a text from our meteorologist, Gabe Manor. I told him I went over to the gas station across the street to get some water and energy drinks to prep for the evening ahead. So we're dealing with these two severe thunderstorm warnings. One pretty much entirely up there in Tennessee, but the southern one just kind of jutting into our coverage area across the state line into DeSoto and Marshall County. You guys out there in Holly Springs, for any of y'all tuning in, y'all are not necessarily within that warning, pretty much right on the outskirts of it. With these storms, they're of course going to just move very slowly. Again, we're really not talking about those fast moving storms just quite yet. This warning had it moving at around southeast around 35. So we're already dealing with these storms moving faster than what we've had to deal with for our Wednesday, our Thursday, our Friday. And that's why our flash flood threat is not as elevated, because these storms aren't just going to sit still for that long amount of time before moving on out of our area. So good news, we're not dealing with that flash flood threat as prominent, and we don't have to worry about these storms kind of sitting over our city and our location for quite as long. They can just kind of dump what they have in store for us and move on out as we continue into the evening hours ahead. So I want to continue covering this severe thunderstorm warning. The unfortunate part with where these are coming in at, we don't really have many cameras furthest up north in those counties. Well, speaking of Holly Springs, I know we do have that one. Let's see. That one is down. I thought that one was going to still be down. Let's take a look out here outside of Senatobia and in the Crenshaw region, and we'll take off that warning. That way we can kind of see what's going on. Again, most of North Mississippi staying dry for the moment. We're kind of waiting for more of those showers and storms to move on in. Let me take a look at our camera down here in Crenshaw, and we'll spin it the right way, because this is probably looking, let's see here, it's looking northwest. So it's already looking at a good spot. I want to move it just a little bit further north so we can try to see some of those storms. But yeah, I think they had it right where they wanted to, because we'd start bumping into that water tower. So let's move it back over. I think we'll leave it kind of at that spot that it was at. That's probably a perfect spot as we wait for more storms. But I will say we've enjoyed our Saturday so far. It's been a sunny one. It's been honestly a beautiful one. If we're dealing with temperatures still within the mid-90s. That's summer here in Mississippi, but we're not talking about that oppressive heat. But we are starting to see some of that cloud cover start to move on in. Low 90s, feeling like 106 out there in Crenshaw. So I know you guys kind of might not be disappointed if y'all get some of these showers to just help you guys feel a little bit better heading into the evening hours ahead. But dealing with some of those cloudy conditions and that cloud cover becoming a little bit more prominent heading into the next few hours. Let's take a look at the chat. What time is it supposed to hit Water Valley? And are these storms coming towards Solagent, Alabama this evening? That's an excellent question. We can kind of start some of that here. I know we'll cover a lot of that here in the 6 o'clock broadcast. But I want to bring up, let's see, I think I have it pulled up. I was kind of getting this ready earlier. We can take a look at Futurecast, and we'll back it up, start at around 6:30. Delete these. Do I not have, oh, there's the delete button. There we go. Then we'll draw it out. Actually, here, let me just do it this way. We'll zoom on out. That way you guys can see your respective location and kind of see what we're going to start dealing with throughout the next little bit. So we were talking about these showers and storms starting to push in around the dinner time frame. So still got another hour or so until we really start seeing those storms out west starting to push in towards you guys in the Delta. We're seeing some of these stronger storms up north making their way in. So our model's already doing a pretty good job with the overall location and timing. We're going to start dealing with maybe even some heavier showers out ahead of it out there towards Union County. That's around 6:30 later on tonight. And as we continue heading into the evening, I know you guys were asking about Water Valley and out there in Alabama, we are expecting this rain coverage to just continue increasing and stick with us throughout the next few hours ahead. We can see for Amory, Tupelo, you guys dealing with some of those showers and storms. Water Valley, that's around 8 o'clock with this latest run of models that are just now coming out. And as we continue into the rest of our evening, we kind of start to see it break on up a little bit. But for you guys out there in our Alabama counties, y'all will get this later on tonight. That's at 9:30, so during the 9 o'clock broadcast hour and on. And then we kind of get that false dry period for a second before we see some more showers and storms moving into the Delta. This is after our 10 o'clock broadcast, so we're going to continue to keep our eyes on this and be ready to go live past 10. We don't just stop our coverage after our broadcast schedule, and so we'll make sure to keep this going all night long if we have to, like we have the past few nights. So very, very heavy out there right around midnight for you guys out there in the Delta. Water Valley kind of getting some more of those showers and a little bit further on south. And that's going to continue into the overnight period before we'll start finally making our way closer towards drier skies. So we still have a ways to go, but I hope that can kind of give you a brief recap for all of you guys tuning in, asking about your respective locations. There's a good chance we could see some of these showers and storms heading into the next few hours. But I kind of just wanted to pop that on because I know you guys are going to ask about your locations as y'all typically do. And I totally get it because y'all want to know what's going on and when y'all can expect it. So hopefully that helps. We're going to continue taking a look at these storms with these warnings for you guys getting affected right now. And we'll pop that lightning back on. And one thing I do want to check, let me change it back over towards our Memphis radar. Perfect. I was watching lightning strikes, and I probably, yeah, we can put it, let me make it to where all of you guys can kind of see what's going on. Our strikes are at around 1,700, but they were up to 2,000 earlier, unless it was just a different frame. I didn't have it this far zoomed out. Of course, you'd think the more we're zoomed out, the more strikes it could pick up on. I watched it cross to 2,000 earlier. Let's see. They're kind of already, yeah, they're starting to build back up again. So we're still going to deal with these showers and storms for a while. I always point out lightning strikes because that's a good way to kind of measure the overall health with these storms as they continue to push closer and closer towards our region. Kind of when we see those lightning strikes, we start dealing with some of those kind of stronger storms as they continue to build on up. Let's go out here towards West Helena. As you guys are seeing a severe thunderstorm just across the Mississippi River. I don't think we're going to have any shots with our cameras. I know the one right behind me here during the nighttime, we saw that lightning continue to flash kind of across the river and pretty much on top of it with the reflection. But you guys staying dry right now, not expecting those showers just quite yet. Let's go out here towards Clarksdale. I'll already pull it up just in case we need to move it. Let's see if we can get kind of a good visual on some of these storms. They might all be positioned west, northwest. Okay, this is already looking northwest. I'm going to shift it just a little bit more to the right. But these are probably all set up good to go for the night as these storms slowly work their way in. This one's moving slow, which means if I keep going, I don't want it to kind of do a fast. There we go, pan. Not much of a difference. But again, as a whole here in North Mississippi, we're really not dealing with those showers and storms just quite yet. We're dealing with those warnings up here in the northernmost portion of our region, but those showers and storms are just now crossing the state line. So we've stayed dry pretty much all throughout our Saturday. That's what we were talking about a lot yesterday on how it's still going to be a beautiful day. It's just later on into the evening hours where we want to kind of starting to get weather aware and get ready for some showers and storms pushing on in. So we're dealing with heavy, heavy rainfall, very energetic, very disruptive. Don't mind the lightning now as we're not really heading off to bed, but I know that can be a little bit annoying later on tonight when we're ready to get, or trying to get ready for our Sunday morning. Again, we can take a look at our wind here with our Memphis radar. We're not going to deal with anything tornadic, but you can already see some of these brighter returns and pretty impressive, especially with how close to the radar site it is. Some of these gusty winds are making it to the surface. It's going to be a little bit breezy as these blow on through. You're definitely going to hear the wind kind of howl outside, but we're not talking about anything rotating. We're not discussing a tornado threat. That is not a worry heading into the overnight period. And anytime I pull up the peak impacts graphic, if we were talking about anything tornadic, we would start to see this red color. And we have not seen that here on our peak impact graphics for a while now. Thankfully, we have not had to talk about a tornado threat. So that will continue into your evening hours ahead. But as you can see, we're still dealing with a lot of pinks and purples starting to make their way closer and closer towards North Mississippi. This is that hail threat that's a little bit more prominent further out northwest. So I think for overall severity, that continues to stay as far northwest as possible, and it will continue to diminish into the next few hours. But that's exactly why we've seen these severe thunderstorm watches in place, to give you guys a heads up, as that will continue all the way towards 10 o'clock later on tonight. Hopefully, we're not going to see any counties get extended or any get added on. And now that I'm taking a look at this, with how heavy that rainfall is, it's not going to let me click on it. Looks like we got an aerial flood. Yeah, we're not going to be able to see it unless I can kind of pull it off here behind the scenes, but I think that pulls off everything. Yeah, it does. Oh, wait, let me see if I can do it this way. Okay, there we go. And then we'll click this. So yeah, we did see an aerial flood advisory get issued for you guys out there in Tennessee and portions of DeSoto and Marshall. So that's giving you guys a heads up as some heavy rainfall is making its way closer towards you guys. So again, flood prone areas up there. Just make sure to kind of get ready, get set up in your house, just so you know that, hey, after this rain kind of moves on through, it's going to take a little bit for the drainage system to start catching on up. So that is going to be a concern with this shower as it continues to just slowly move on through. We'd like to see that kind of speed up a little bit so it's not sitting on top of you guys for too long. But I wanted to cover that because I just saw that get issued. And let me unclick it again. It's until 7:45. So there we go. We still have pretty much 2 hours until that is set to expire, just with that heavy rainfall occurring. So again, flash flooding, although it has not been as high of a concern today that it has in the past few, we can still see examples of that. So definitely want to stay weather aware heading into the evening hours. But I think we're kind of at the point at night to where hopefully we're not doing too many Saturday, I guess, afternoon plans. We're starting to wind down, get ready for the evening, and then we'll be ready to go throughout the next few hours here and kind of safe indoors. All right, let's continue to take a look at the chat. Everybody's kind of saying where they're tuning in from. And Robbie Richardson, oh, my good friend out there in Starkville, looking good. Oh, you all are out in Texas right now. Enjoy keeping an eye on family and friends in North Mississippi. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. That means a lot. And then we also have Becoming and YouTube saying thank you for keeping us updated. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I know we're not dealing with a whole lot right now, but we are still dealing with some warnings here for North Mississippi. So we wanted to make sure to get on, whether that's one or two or how many, as they are starting to impact us here in North Mississippi, to give you guys a heads up. Now, just a second ago, if y'all saw it here, I may have been covering it up behind me. We saw another warning get extended or issued further out east as it approaches the Mississippi River. So for you guys on the western side of DeSoto County and Tunica, y'all could start dealing with a severe thunderstorm warning in the coming few minutes or next kind of 15 to 30, as that storm does not show any signs of slowing on down, but still kind of making that eastward, southeastward, I guess, progression closer and closer towards the river in North Mississippi. So we're going to start to see more of these warnings creep on in towards our coverage area. And want to keep you guys updated on that. We can go take a look at that warning. And we can even see some of those heavier showers outside of the warning. But let's zoom in here and start breaking this one down. Again, very energetic. Make sure I'm not missing anything from the team. But yeah, I mean, still, I mean, this is very heavy warning area. So for you guys out there towards West Helena, still take that seriously, even though that severe thunderstorm warning is just a little bit further north. But we're dealing with that expiring at around 6:30. I think both of these. Okay, so the initial one is set to expire around 5:45. So that one will begin to expire, but they already issued one downstream for this same storm as it continues moving further and further east. And that's for Lee. Let's see, just for Lee and St. Francis, Arkansas counties. Okay, so for those two counties just across the Mississippi River out there in Arkansas, you'll have to forgive me not knowing my Arkansas counties. I'll have to start memorizing those around our coverage areas. That's typically where we see some of this weather come from. but dealing with some of those showers and storms kind of getting closer and closer towards you guys out there in West Helena. You can take a look. This portion of the storm is starting to get a little bit energetic and starting to see some of those brighter returns. So West Helena, y'all are going to start to see some of those heavy showers make their way closer and closer towards you guys. We could take this on a loop. I mean, yeah. So this is the severe component of the storm, but notice just south how we're starting to see some of those heavier showers, and it just really starts to ramp on up, kind of latch onto that boundary. So I would expect kind of the southern portion of that storm and this warning to continue to kind of bring some of those heavy rainfall. And we'll see here with our threats graphic if it's starting to try to produce some hail. Yeah, I'm not surprised. We're starting to see some of that darker purple a little bit. So trying to build up somewhat of a hail core. Don't know if it's making its way down towards the surface yet. I would have to see. Oh, wait, actually, let's cover this first. Let's take a look at our echo tops kind of across the board here, and we'll remove lightning again. So we're already talking about this tall vertical development. When we start to see those reds starting to pop on up, we're talking about 50,000 feet, and we're actually talking about some of that kind of brown making its way in. I think we can see a little bit. Yes, I'd say the tallest one is actually out here towards Mariana and Arkansas. That should be coming in at around 55,000 feet, if I can click that right. Yeah, so we're talking about 55,000 feet, working its way closer and closer towards 60,000. So these are pretty strong and kind of tall thunderstorms starting to make their way into our viewing area. I see behind the scenes, Kim Williams asking in the chat, what is our primary threat? Fantastic question. I want to continue kind of reminding you about that. Our primary threat tonight continues to be wind and hail. So unfortunately, still dealing with what we've had to deal with throughout the past few days. But the good news on that is y'all have done an excellent job kind of staying updated and aware and making it through kind of these just stormy days here. And we're dealing with the same concept heading into tonight. So we're not dealing with anything tornadic, no rotation. That is not a threat. So I hope that can bring some comfort to you guys here in North Mississippi. We're not going to have to deal with that tonight, but some gusty conditions, some disruptive, energized storms making their way through that can prove annoying for power outages and kind of losing power temporarily. But a good thing that we want to keep emphasizing, especially with how 2026 started with that ice storm. I know some of us can get a little bit anxious when we lose power. We're not talking about anything long lasting like what you guys had to endure during January. We've seen several outages be reported throughout the past few days, and your local EPAs are on top of it. As always, they do a great job getting back out there and trying to restore power as quick as they can and as safe as they can as these storms continue to move on through. So we're going to take a look and continue analyzing these severe thunderstorm warnings as they continue pushing into North Mississippi. Again, as a whole for our coverage area, we're really not dealing with much. We've had a beautiful Saturday. It's been sunny, it's been dry, it's been honestly pretty mild, all things considered, with some of this cooler, drier air moving on in. But we're also going to have to start talking about some of those showers and storms moving in again tonight. We're dealing with those severe thunderstorm warnings further up north, kind of along the state line, affecting you guys in DeSoto and Marshall County. And that's it as of right now for our coverage area. But we're also keeping an eye on this severe thunderstorm warning just on the outskirts of the Mississippi River, just west out there in Arkansas. So we're going to continue to see that. Kim Williams also asking, does it look like it'll weaken down as it moves towards Prentiss County, Baldwin area? That's a good question. So what we're noticing, and pretty much with the setup today, overall peak intensity, I would say, continues to stay further northwest and kind of what Arkansas is dealing with. Now, as it continues to move on in, it's going to maintain its strength, especially as we're still talking about some sunny skies and just constant daytime heating that we've had. But the normal kind of, I guess, pattern with these storms and showers, the further into the evening overnight hours we get, daytime heating gets cut off. We're not really talking about overall peak intensity. So as it continues to move its way further and further westward, we're going to start hopefully losing some of that. And we really don't want to deal with that anywhere further on south. So those severe thunderstorm watches have been issued earlier on today. That will continue all the way until 10 o'clock. But we're going to keep our eyes on it just in case it does continue to keep somewhat of that intensity throughout the overnight hours. And of course, we'll be ready to go live in a moment's notice, but hoping that it's not going to be anything too long and too disruptive to keep us awake. But if it makes any of you guys feel better, again, you can go to sleep knowing that we're not dealing with a tornado threat. So as long as you're good dealing with some heavy rainfall, few rumbles, good sleeping weather is what a lot of you guys were saying the other night, y'all are still going to be good to go heading into our overnight period. Just kind of a stormy end to our Saturday before we get to enjoy even cooler conditions for our Sunday. So again, give and takes with some of these forecasts. We kind of got to get through these stormy, severe portions of the weather before we can really enjoy the good. And I know we'll all be excited to start enjoying that here together. So let's continue to analyze some of these warnings that are ongoing here. We're dealing with this severe thunderstorm warning just on the outskirts of the Mississippi River. That is set to expire around 6:30. But again, for you guys closer towards West Helena, we're still seeing some of those showers and storms continue to expand a little bit south of it. So that continues to be an issue, even though you guys aren't necessarily in that warning. It's still going to bring some heavy, heavy rainfall. And of course, that lightning, which I'll see if that has increased, that has continued to climb for you guys in the southern portions of that storm. So very energetic, very disruptive. And then we're also taking a look at this severe thunderstorm warning affecting you guys out there towards Marshall and DeSoto. And I don't think it's clipping Benton County. I think y'all have been shaved off of both of them. Okay, so I don't think it's necessarily, oh, well, the most northwestern portion, just ahead of Michigan City, dealing with that severe thunderstorm warning. So you guys pretty much right on the outskirts of the Tennessee state line and Marshall County line. Y'all are under that severe thunderstorm warning, but Benton as a whole, pretty much outside of it. But would not be surprised to kind of see some more of these thunderstorm warnings or severe thunderstorm warnings get extended a little bit downstream, just if they're continuing to keep the pace that they have. They have not seen any signs of slowing down just quite yet. But again, also a good thing, because the quicker we can get these to move on out of our area, that helps us not deal with the potential for some flash flooding. And we've already seen that aerial flood advisory for you guys out there in the northern most portions of our coverage area and out into Tennessee. Kim Williams also asking, oh wait, no, you were asking about it weakening, and then you said, I can deal with heavy rain and stuff, I just don't like high winds. So yes, unfortunately, we're gonna have to kind of deal with the, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. That would bug me too. Somebody said, fix the right strap. I didn't realize it was like that. I would have kept my eyes on that all night long, just waiting for me to fix it. Thank you so much. But coming back to what Kim was saying, kind of dealing with those higher winds, and I know that can bring some anxiety. That unfortunately is going to be one of the things that we're going to have to deal with as these storms move on through. Thankfully, not really dealing with winds caused by tornadoes, because that is not going to be a threat tonight. But some straight line gusty winds, unfortunately, that will be part of the things that we need to keep our eyes out on and stay weather aware on as we continue into the evening ahead. So big thanks to Henry for commenting that and letting me know. I hate that that's probably been like that the entire time. I think when I walked over to the gas station, it was like that. They never gave me a heads up. So thank you, Henry, for letting me know about that. All right, we're continuing to take a look at the severe thunderstorm warning. Let's see if we can get a shot with some of our cameras. Our Holly Springs one is down. Do we try Clarksdale? I know that one's further north, and we could probably, oh no, that's right, because the water tower is there. Let's try the Batesville community and see if we can look a little bit further north. I mean, we're already seeing cloudier skies than what we've had to deal with. So that unfortunately is part of the story tonight as we head into our evening hours. But again, it's been a beautiful Saturday so far. It's just kind of one of those stormy, kind of great endings to the day, but at least we get to enjoy a beautiful day tomorrow. Bear with me a second as I kind of turn the Batesville camera to look a little bit further north. I mean, I think we're still pretty far away from these showers and storms. We're not going to get clear view, but I mean, you can just kind of see, well, a pole there as it kind of lags behind, but we're dealing with just those cloudy skies. Wow, this is sensitive. Let's bump that down here and move that back over. But yeah, we're dealing with overcast, kind of gray clouds the further northwest we go within our region. You can see that very clearly the more you look up, and then out there in the distance, that's where we're seeing some of our showers and storms continue to rumble. Now, I will say, of course, with this kind of blinding rainfall, we really can't see many of those lightning strikes just quite yet. If this was nighttime, we would just see constant flashes out there in the distance. There we go. That's going to be our best shot. We're probably seeing most of that heavy rainfall kind of right within that area, super far away. Can't really tell but those thunderstorms are a little bit further out in the distance. So it's always a good thing when our cameras can't quite spot those thunderstorms yet, because that really means it's not impacting most of North Mississippi yet. We're still staying fairly dry, but it's the northwestern portion of our region that we continue to keep a close eye on. And I want to see if they have a special weather statements out anywhere else. We're looking at the one just north of Alcorn County. This is a little bit stronger, not quite reaching severe thunderstorm warning. But that one could start to impact you guys just north of the Tennessee state line and maybe even northern portions of Tishomingo County. So again, y'all aren't included within that severe thunderstorm watch, but that doesn't mean you're out of the neck of the woods completely. We can still deal with some of these stronger showers. Continuing to move on in. And there we go. With that downstream warning for the southern portion of the storm that we've been keeping an eye on, that one has really gained some strength out there towards West Helena and getting ready to cross into Tunica. And I believe that is Coahoma County. There we go. So you guys are under that severe thunderstorm warning until 6:45. What you guys will be dealing with are going to be some of those heavy wind gusts and the potential for some hail. You can kind of see those brighter returns. That has been pretty significant the past few here. Let me switch this over towards our threats. And I think Memphis is still going to be the best bet to look. Now, I know you see that red ring there. I'm not too concerned about that. That's just a different software trying to draw our attention to it to see if anything significant is ongoing. And then we can take a look at our wind product here. I mean, I think this is probably what we call kind of a mesocyclone. So these winds really strong further up in the storm. It kind of shows that it's healthy, but we're not dealing with any of that reaching the surface. But that's exactly why kind of the Barron software is putting that ring there. Again, we're not worried about that. We're not concerned, but we'll keep our eyes on it. Again, we're going to deal with hail and wind. And honestly, I would say wind is probably the bigger threat compared to our hail. So we're starting to deal with some of that here with this storm as it continues to push closer and closer towards North Mississippi. And for you guys out there towards Tunica and Coahoma County, that warning is set to expire at around 6:45. And we've seen some of those brighter returns here. We'll take that off. We'll take our lightning off. That way you guys can see very clearly how this storm has transitioned and kind of continued to build up its strength. I mean, we're talking about that severe thunderstorm warning further up north with those brighter returns, what prompted it. And then we started to see those showers and storms start to build on up, kind of on top of you guys out there towards Alexa and getting closer and closer towards West Helena. And that's where we're dealing with some of that. Now, I will say, if I can get this to match up, we're already starting to see, so that's probably where we saw our brightest returns. And then thankfully, we're seeing that start to diminish, and we can already start to see somewhat of a boundary that it's trying to latch onto. So we're going to continue to see it make that movement further out east, a little bit southeast towards you guys out there towards Lula out there in Coahoma County. So you guys are expected to see some of those showers and storms here within the next few minutes. And this warning, okay, our meteorologist Gabe Maynor saying that we may have had 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts reported out in Memphis and closer towards this warning further up north. So let's continue to take a look at that one, as this is what originally prompted our coverage. And we'll send out another notification because we're getting closer and closer towards the 6 o'clock broadcast. So let me kind of send one of these out. And honestly, let me just prep it for the 6. That way we can bring more people on and keep you guys updated. Bear with me behind the scenes while I try to spell check this on a tiny screen. I can't send anything out that looks wrong. But we're dealing with these severe thunderstorm warnings that are continuing to push into North Mississippi. There we go. That looks about right. Sorry, I've learned that I'm not good at talking while multitasking, so I'm going to just give me 1 second. Okay. I have that ready to go, so we'll have more people come in for 6. That way we can have you guys ready. And then let me cue this up behind the scenes. That way we can have that ready to go, because once it gets 6 o'clock, we'll take that quick 1-minute break, get things going again, I'll grab some water, and then we're going to keep our coverage going. So we're dealing with the severe thunderstorm warning out there towards DeSoto and Marshall, where our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard, he was saying that 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts were reported up there, kind of right along the state line. So that is unfortunately one of the things that we're talking about, Kim. I know you were asking and kind of concerned about just windy, gusty conditions. That is probably our most primary concern, and that storm is not showing any signs of slowing down as we've seen that severe thunderstorm warning get issued further on downstream. That is now encompassing you guys out there towards Holly Springs, and they have issued it as a destructive one. So this is probably going to be one of our stronger ones as it's bringing some heavy, heavy wind gusts, unfortunately, coming in at around 80 miles per hour is what our meteorologist Gabe Maynard was saying. So we're going to keep our eyes on this one. This is probably our strongest storm that unfortunately we've probably had to deal with throughout the past few days as it's bringing some of those wind gusts. We could take a look at our wind. Take a look at how bright those returns are. So we're talking about gusty winds making their way down towards the surface, and just you're definitely hearing it howl outdoors. I will say wind is probably our primary threat. Along with that heavy rainfall, hail continues to slow down, at least with these last few scans. So we're going to continue to break down this here in the next few seconds. Let me start this up, send a notification. We're going to be back here in a minute, and we'll cover this severe thunderstorm warning as it continues to ring through North Mississippi.
In 1998, we needed help with the loan. Some friends of ours had been using First Choice Bank. First Choice has been helping us ever since.
We just love the service. The tellers are wonderful. They know our names. Why would we want to bank anywhere else?
When C.K. Little opened his doors in downtown Corinth nearly 80 years ago, his plan was simple: deliver excellent service and exceed expectations. That's why we say a little gift goes a long way.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
All right, well, I'm meteorologist Caleb Edelblut. We're covering it still wanted to go back. Give me one more second. We're not going to be at the monitor right now, as we're definitely in severe weather mode, as a destructive severe thunderstorm warning has been issued with the National Weather Service office out there in Memphis. You guys in the comments are already catching up on why this has been issued. It is bringing hefty, hefty wind gusts. Our meteorologist Gabe Maynard, he texted me saying that 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts were reported. So that is exactly why we're seeing this warning issued and why it is flashing here on our screen. Thankfully, we haven't had to deal with that much here in North Mississippi, so I know this looks new to you guys, but that is what we are dealing with here at the 6 o'clock hour. So a lot of you guys in the comments were saying that that storm in Memphis means no joke. A lot of people are reporting power. Wind is howling outdoors. And some people also asking about whether these storms are heading towards North Alabama or some of the southeast counties. So real quick, before we continue to break down this severe thunderstorm warning, while all of you guys continue to tune in, we're not dealing with many rain or storm chances just yet here in North Mississippi. It's for our northernmost counties with that destructive severe thunderstorm warning being issued. And these storms are going to continue to push in that southeast direction. And we could still see some more development out here along the state line for you guys out there in Alabama. But our primary concern at this moment is this strong thunderstorm, as it has received that destructive tag just due to how gusty these conditions are going to be. Now, when we're talking about severe weather today, let's take a look to see if they've updated any of that. We have been upgraded to that level 2 slight risk here, and I'll move this out of the way. That way you guys can kind of see what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with that level 2 slight risk, and we're not dealing with a tornado threat. Again, you see those green boxes. Let me see if I can pull that off for you guys. That way that can make you feel a little bit better here. If I can uncheck that. There we go. Our tornado risk, we are not dealing with that today. What continues to be our primary concern is wind. And we are talking about the potential. Yeah, there we go. We're talking about damaging wind here with that level 2 slight risk being issued. So we want to make sure to keep our eyes on that. We've already seen that damaging severe thunderstorm warning get issued, and then the potential for some hail. That continues to stay a little bit further northwest, where we're talking about that peak intensity continues to be. But we're going to deal with some hefty, hefty wind gusts as these thunderstorms continue to move on in. So we're going to continue to take a look at that, break down that warning for all of you guys tuning on in, because that has probably been, well, it's definitely been our strongest storm today, but might have been our strongest storm throughout the past few days as we're dealing with that destructive tag. Again, what I mentioned right before we went into break, it's a good thing that we haven't really seen this often here in North Mississippi. We don't want to deal with this often, but the reason you see it flashing is because this has kind of like a destructive label on it, meaning that this one's a little bit stronger, bringing some of those gusty winds there, which was reported at around 80 miles per hour. So our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard, gave us a good heads up, and we saw that warning get issued shortly after he sent over that text. So whole team kind of watching here behind the scenes and helping each other out as we're dealing with that severe thunderstorm watch and warnings ongoing here in North Mississippi. I'd be curious to see whether or not they expand maybe some of these watches, especially with how these storms are already producing these gusty winds. But we're continuing to take our eyes very closely on this severe thunderstorm that continues to push in. And there we go. Those severe thunderstorm watches were actually just extended further out east for you guys here in Mississippi as we're seeing some of these storms continue to rumble and move on in. Now, again, we're dealing with energetic and disruptive storms. Our total strikes all within this frame are just shy of 2,500. So still dealing with quite a few strikes that can cause power outages along with these straight line winds. So we're going to take a look at this warning. We're going to zoom in a little bit more here. Unfortunately, our camera down there in Holly Springs is down, so we don't have a clear visual on the storm. But if we wanted to go take a look here at our winds, I mean, these are those bright returns that we're talking about, just talking about how heavy and gusty these winds continue to be. If we take a look at our threats here, again, we're not talking about anything tornadic. So when we keep talking about wind gusts and the threat for wind, it's not coming from a tornado. I want to make that very clear for all of you guys tuning in today at 6. We've been starting this coverage about an hour ago, but we are dealing with gusty conditions that were reported further up north, kind of closer towards Memphis, making their way closer towards the state line with this severe thunderstorm. That's going to continue to dig further and further southeast, affecting more and more of you guys out there in Marshall, Benton, eventually into Tippah, and I believe that, there we go, Union County. I'm a little bit zoomed in, but dealing with some of those severe thunderstorm warnings and I guess technically storms continuing to push further and further southeast. But I will say that I think wind is our primary concern with this storm. We are starting to see some of that hail, but again, confidence remains very low. Wind, I would say, is probably our highest threat that we're going to have to make sure to continue monitoring here in North Mississippi. Even again, that latest scan, we're just seeing a whole lot of that green, so heavy rainfall. Good news is these storms are moving a little bit quicker than the storms we've had to deal with the past few days. So flash flooding, not as primary of a concern here in North Mississippi, but definitely wanted to keep our eyes here on that storm as it continues to move on in. We're dealing with some of that heavy rainfall. But gusty winds, that continues to be the biggest threat. Now, I know we've been hitting a lot on that warning. Let's just go downstream here for a second, closer towards you guys in Tunica and Cohomo County. Y'all are dealing with the severe thunderstorm warning. Thankfully, not quite as intense as this one we're seeing further out east. But that one is set to expire around 6:45, and I apologize. I don't think I ever let you know when this one is set to expire. That is also at around 6:45. So we're dealing with 2 warnings within our region, thankfully both set to expire at the same time. So hopefully we can continue to see that trend. But unfortunately, with how these thunderstorms continue to develop and maintain its strength, I believe we'll see more and more warnings downstream. Would not be surprised if we kind of see some more affect you guys out there in the Delta, as another warning could be issued for that severe one as well. So I know there's also getting reports. Let me turn that on. We might be able to, unfortunately, start seeing some here with our radar. I'm not seeing any yet, but some reports are coming in of trees down, multiple reports of trees down, an emergency manager out there in Marshall County. So that could unfortunately cause some power outages. And then there we go with those reports of 80-mile-per-hour winds coming with the storm going into Marshall County. So that is definitely a warning that probably sounded all of your phones, as that does have that destructive tag on it. So unfortunately, very gusty conditions continue to be the story here, as we're going to continue to keep all our effort here on this warning for you guys out there towards Marshall, Benton, Tippah, and Union County. This warning is set to expire around 6:45. and wind continues to be unfortunately very, very high. So we're talking about some of those brighter returns here. I know this is a product we usually look at kind of if we're talking about anything tornadic. Thankfully, we're not looking at it because of that, because that is not part of the threat today. But we are bringing this up because we are still talking about gusty straight line winds. And these could be proven to be very kind of devastating just with how gusty they are. And that's why we're just really keeping our attention here with that severe thunderstorm warning that you can see is flashing. We typically don't see this very often, which means we want to take this very, very seriously. So anybody out there towards Marshall, especially for you guys out here in Benton, as that storm gets closer, you guys need to be in y'all's kind of safe space, just indoors. We definitely don't want to be outside as these gust conditions kind of move on in. And this severe thunderstorm warning has been kind of extended for you guys further on downstream in Tippah and Union County. So we're going to still deal with that. And I believe this warning has it moving. Last few have been at around 35 miles an hour. So we can put a storm track. Okay, perfect. So this one's moving at 45, so even better. We can try to get this out of our neck of the woods a little bit quicker. We're not dealing with those slow moving storms as how we have had to deal with the past few days here. I'll back this up. That way I can give you all an accurate direction. It looks like it's starting to kick off at Boundary, and we're going to see probably this storm just south of Holly Springs probably move further on south. But I'm going to do a storm track kind of all within this warning here. Yeah, we'll just kind of go along the leading edge. Actually, no, because the gusty winds, they're going to make it towards you guys a little bit earlier. See if we can kind of see where that leading edge is. There we go. We're going to do it this way. So I'm drawing this track out for you guys, and this isn't with the heaviest precipitation because I think our biggest threat is the wind, as we've seen that destructive tag kind of get placed on it. Let me move that down, and thankfully we're going a little bit quicker today so we can cover more people. It was moving around 45, so I'm going to go 50 to try to give more and more of you guys a heads up as we're dealing with this severe thunderstorm warning with that destructive tag, dealing with heavy, heavy winds. So Pine Grove and Windburn around 6:11, Cannon around 6:13, Blackjack 6:16, same for Hickory Flat. I know you guys were asking in the comments. Hamilton at 6:18, 6:19 for Shady Grove, Lowry and Blue Mountain 6:22, 6:24 for Darnon, Macedonia and Myrtle, 6:25 for Mount Zion, Cotton Plant 6:26, same for Galloway and Old Myrtle. And we're going to trim this down just slightly to cover some more cities that you guys will probably pick up on a little bit easier, unless, there we go. All right, so we're talking about Myrtle and Ripley around 6:24 and 6:26 respectively. Faulkner at 6:27, New Albany 6:33, Dumas 6:35, Jumpertown 6:48, Guntown 6:53, Boonville 6:55, Saltillo around 6:57, and Marietta around 7:04. So this continues to be one that we really want to take seriously, as these are gusty winds continuing to move into our region. Unfortunately for you guys out there in the northern portions, dealing with these a little bit more prominent. Now, I will notice now that I zoomed out, the Golden Triangle region has now been put into that severe thunderstorm watch. So we are expecting more development to kind of occur within the next few hours. I know some of you guys are just now tuning in, kind of asking whether or not your respective town or location will be part of this threat tonight. So we're dealing with these storms. They're going to continue to push in through the south, or kind of going in the southeast direction. And we do have a chance to see some of these showers and storms pop up and bring some of those heavy wind gusts and of course heavy downpours. But thankfully, tornado threats, that is not on the table tonight. Wind is our top concern, as we're seeing here with that flashing warning. That means it has been labeled as destructive with 80-mile-per-hour winds, wind gusts reported. And then hail is our secondary threat, as that continues to stay a little bit more prominent further northwest. So you guys in the northern portions of the Delta, I think y'all could start dealing with that hail a little bit more than everybody further out east, southeast, and of course further out there in Arkansas. So wind, that continues to be our biggest concern, as we're actively seeing that in real time here with that severe thunderstorm warning that is set to expire around 6:45 in this moment of time. So we're dealing with wind here in this severe thunderstorm thunderstorm warning for Tippah, Benton, Union, and Marshall counties set to expire around 6:45. And I would say we're dealing with more hail with this severe thunderstorm warning that is also set to expire at 6:45 for Tunica and Coahoma County. Now, we still have a good 30 minutes until we see that expire, but would not be surprised to kind of see some more warnings get issued maybe further downstream if it continues to keep kind of this head of steam. The good news is that these storms are moving a little bit quicker today than what they have been moving the past few days, so we don't have to endure these threats as long as we've had to in the past. These are going to be gusty conditions, and hopefully they'll blow on through pretty quickly. I know somebody in the comments asking about Corinth, and Kim asking, well, let me touch on Kim's real quick because she brings up a good point. What about if you live in a trailer and are in the path of the destructive storms? I would say if you have any storm shelters within your respective kind of city or nearby, I would say for you guys in trailers or maybe mobile homes, with just how gusty these winds are, it is definitely a day to where you should use those as we're dealing with some of these strong storms pushing into North Mississippi. Again, just because we're not dealing with anything tornadic, I mean, straight line wind gusts can still be proven to be very destructive. So for you guys out there, I would say storm shelters, especially within this severe thunderstorm warning, are smart to be used for you guys out there and kind of just not as sturdy built homes. So just make sure to take that as you head into the evening. And the other question that I was going to touch on, what about Corinth? You guys are not included within that destructive severe thunderstorm warning, but as you can tell, portions of Alcorn County are. I should have been mentioning that. I forgot to kind of mention that warning has been issued for you guys, but Corinth not necessarily within the path, but we're still going to see some of those gusty winds continue to get closer and closer towards you guys out there in Alcorn County. Now, thankfully, y'all aren't dealing with that quite yet. But we're still going to have to worry about that here. So let's continue to zoom back in. I want to continue keeping our emphasis on this warning. Before I do, we're still dealing with that severe thunderstorm warning kind of crossing the Mississippi River right now, bringing the potential for some hail. Would not be surprised if that one is dropping hail, but this one further up north continues to take a big priority as we're dealing with some of that destructive wind continuing to blow on through. And we'll zoom or kind of back. I will say, I would hope that it's kind of losing some of that gustiness. As you can see, those brighter colors really starting to fade. I mean, you can see that sharp boundary and line on where you're going to get the brunt of that wind, but it's nowhere near as strong as what it was as it pushed into Marshall County. So that continues to be an excellent sign as it crossed Highway 7, across Highway 4, pushing closer towards you guys in Ashland. So you guys are probably experiencing those heavy wind gusts right now. That makes me feel a lot better. So let me actually just zoom out real quick, go and cover this warning down here towards Tunica, because I don't want to ignore you guys out here, of course. Make sure you guys know what's going on here. We're dealing with that severe thunderstorm warning. That is set to expire around 6:45, and then we're going to see, yep, okay, so 60 mile per hour is 1 inch in hail. So you guys are still dealing with that, but everything continues to look pretty good. Again, brighter returns here, so I think hail continues to be a concern, but with how hot we've been lately, I'm not too concerned about that as far as meeting 1 inch in diameter kind of criteria and meeting severe, but could potentially see some of that hail. But wanted to really talk about that really quick before we continue to talk about this warning further up north. So trying to cover all of you guys out here. But again, for our counties up here with this destructive severe thunderstorm warning being issued, this is our major concern as we're talking about some gusty and destructive winds making their way into our viewing area. So again, if we want to take a look at that here with our wind product, we're dealing with some of those brighter conditions, and it's red because it's moving away from the radar site. So red does not mean bad. This could be the same thing if it was green. Technically, if we switched it over towards our Columbus radar site out there, that would mean that the wind is pushing towards it. So green and red does not make any difference, but we are talking about gusty conditions with some of those brighter returns. But our best bet to see it kind of a little bit more accurate is with our Memphis radar site, as it's a little bit closer towards these storms. So I just wanted to talk about that really quick. Red does not mean bad. It's just giving us a direction on that wind blowing away from the radar. So we're dealing with those gusty winds continuing to blow out of Ashland right now, getting closer towards you guys along Highway 15. So for Faulkner, Ripley, Blue Mountain, y'all are starting to probably hear those rumbles, and some of that breeze is starting to get closer and closer. Let's put that, let's actually, yeah, you can see some of these brighter returns. Let's try to see if we can kind of click to see how fast these are blowing in. So there we go, 69 miles per hour when we're talking about some of these gusty conditions. So we're talking about 60 plus with some of these brighter returns. And if we were to go back on why this severe thunderstorm warning was issued, when we were talking about those brighter returns and thankfully how they continue to diminish, we're going to go probably right about here where we're talking about gusty winds. So we can continue to pixel some of those. Yeah, 72. I mean, I know our meteorologist Gabe Maynard, he was on top of everything, making sure we knew that 80 did officially get reported. So that's why we're talking about just destructive winds making their way kind of further into North Mississippi. But thankfully, those brighter returns, not quite as apparent, but still very prominent within this storm. We're dealing with strong wind gusts that we haven't really had to deal with as much as we had the past few weeks or past few days here. It's been a busy week here in North Mississippi. I know a bunch of you guys asking about Corinth. Y'all are staying outside of this warning, but you can kind of see kind of that boundary. That's going to continue to dig further and further southeast. Now, I would say the brunt of it will continue to stay just south of the city. Y'all are not out of the clear completely, as y'all will still deal with some gusty conditions and some heavy downpours. I mean, we could take a look at that here on precipitation a little bit further up north. But you guys are going to still deal with that. And New Albany, further up north, y'all are in the path of this storm continuing to make its way further and closer towards you guys. And it looks like another severe thunderstorm warning got issued under this one. So they're still expecting this storm to continue maintaining its strength as it continues pushing further and further into Tippah, Benton, Union, Marshall, and starting to exit Marshall, thankfully, as you guys are going to hopefully kind of be out of it here soon within the next few minutes. But we're dealing with gusty conditions as this continues to move on through. We can take a look at our hail swath real quick, but again, hail is not really the concern with this storm. That it was dumping hail further up north, pretty much across the state line, but where precipitation is, and you can see we're not seeing anything here past Holly Springs, and we're seeing that precipitation. So this is a wind-driven warning. This is destructive winds that are continuing to push into North Mississippi. Let me clear that out so that doesn't block anything. I know you guys up in Corinth continue asking whether or not y'all are good. We're seeing some of those stronger showers and storms just north, some of those gusty winds a little bit further south. Thankfully, the brunt of it not heading towards you guys out there within the city of Corinth, but that doesn't mean y'all are out of it completely, as y'all will still deal with some of these storms making their way closer towards you guys. Let's see here. Let's do another track on this as you guys want to know when it is going to approach. And this one is still moving, I believe it's around 45. So we're going to do 50. We just saw another severe thunderstorm warning get issued further downstream for you guys along the Mississippi River. We'll go cover that in a second. But let's track this out one more time. We'll switch it towards our wind profile. That way we can go along the boundary there on where we're really going to start to feel those gusty winds. And we'll go outside of the warning too to encompass all of you guys. So this is going to continue pushing southeast. And there we go. And then I'll zoom this out. That way you all can see. So we're talking about Lowry at 622, Macedonia at around 623. Same for Myrtle, Blue Mountain 623, Mount Zion 624, Etta around 625. Same for Galway and Old Myrtle, Cotton Plant 626, Faulkner 626, Ripley 626, New Hope around 627, Enterprise around 628. Bluff, Concord, Pumpkin Center around 629, and Poolville around 630. And then I will change this here so we can talk about some other locations. We're talking about New Albany around 633 for you guys out there in Union County. Ecru around 644. I know you guys have seen some of these strong storms already this week. Guntown 653, Boonville 654, Saltillo 656. Tupelo around 704, Mantachie around 709, Plantersville around 711, and Fulton around 716. So that should hopefully give y'all a good time frame on when we can continue to expect these winds and heavy precip to make its way closer and closer towards you guys. Again, disruptive storms as well, as we're talking about this lightning, very, very heavy and just dense, but not quite seeing it kind of as active along with this wind. So wind, the number one threat right now as we continue tracking this storm and a destructive severe thunderstorm warning out there towards Marshall. Tippah and Benton County, Union, and portions of Alcorn. Prentiss not included, Lee not included, Pontotoc not included, but you guys are the counties pretty much right on the outskirts of it that will start to see that severe thunderstorm continue to make its way closer and closer towards you guys. But zooming out here again, I'm going to keep both in frame so that way you guys out here towards the Sardis community and Panola and Quitman County, you guys have started to get included in that severe thunderstorm warning that continues to dig further and further into our coverage area. Again, it's been a beautiful Saturday. We were talking about how it would stay mostly dry, but we're going to deal with these stormy conditions throughout our evening hours and unfortunately dealing with them windy as well. Speaking of wind, Ashley asking, will there be tornadoes? We are not dealing with tornadoes tonight. I know that can be a concern, especially as we're seeing a flashing warning here in North Mississippi. Thankfully, we don't have to see it very often, but that means we're dealing with wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour that have been recorded and measured. So even though we are not dealing with tornadoes, and that is not a threat tonight, damaging straight line winds continues to be a #1 concern and can still be detrimental to us here in North Mississippi, especially with some of these storms we've already seen throughout the past few days and the damage reports you guys have sent in. We're arguably dealing with some stronger at this moment in time right now at 6:23. So we're continuing to deal with that here. The destructive severe thunderstorm warning is for you guys out there in Marshall, Benton, Tippah, Union, and portions of Alcorn County. Speaking of Alcorn County, another severe thunderstorm warning has been issued just north of you guys. So I know a lot of people asking about Corinth and Alcorn County. So y'all are kind of sandwiched between these warnings, not receiving the blunt of it. Lindsay saying the winds picking up in Blue Mountain. I would not be surprised as we're still seeing that kind of brighter band make its way closer towards you guys. Now that we covered that other warning, let's continue to keep all our focus here on this destructive severe thunderstorm warning further up north, getting closer and closer towards you guys out there in Blue Mountain. You can definitely tell, I mean, this is what we mean. You guys in the comments reporting that the wind's picking up, we'll take a look. That kind of gray, or excuse me, that line of brighter winds, that's showing you those gusty conditions. That is almost right on top of you guys out there in Blue Mountain, and that's going to continue digging further southeast. So we're still dealing with some strong storms, bringing hefty winds. Thankfully, hail has really not been a concern with this storm. As you can tell, we're dealing with a lot of green, so we're not even really talking about hail with this severe thunderstorm warning. Wind continues to be our biggest concern. Now, I am starting to see kind of some of these brighter pixels here with our storm relative wind. I don't know if this one's going to do the best job picking up on it, but let's just kind of try to pixel some of them. So that's around, 70 miles an hour, 53. Let's clear those off and try another one here. I think this one's just a little bit duller. So 64. So we're talking about anywhere above pretty much 60 miles per hour. Some areas getting up to 70 out there, as you can just see. So we're dealing with that a lot here in North Mississippi, with some of those gusty winds continuing to blow on into North Mississippi. Let me make sure everything's looking good. Okay, so we're still dealing with that warning here. I'd be curious to see what the folks up there in Memphis are thinking about. So gusty winds just continues to be the biggest threat. Trees down, damaged tin on roofs. That's in Bobbitt Road in Mount Pleasant. So we're unfortunately starting to see some of those damage reports come on in. Let me see if I can update this here behind the scenes. Control C. As we continue to take a look at this destructive severe thunderstorm warning that has been issued for us here in North Mississippi. Again, this is not a common thing, so I know it looks a little bit out of place here, but that's because we're dealing with these damaging wind gusts of up to 80 miles an hour or more. So wind continues to be our biggest concern as we're taking a look at that here. Okay, that looks all good. Let me switch this back over so I can continue to monitor everything you guys are saying. Half of Holly Springs already out of power. Anything bad in Hickory Flat? You guys are kind of right on the edge of some of those damaging gusts making their way closer and closer towards you guys. So unfortunately, that continues to be the concern with the severe thunderstorm warning. Again, set to expire around 6:45, but let's take a look at our reflectivity actually as I hope that that means that it is starting to kind of lose some of its strength. You can definitely tell where it was at its strongest, dumping that heavy rainfall, lightning, potential for some hail, but the wind gusts most prominently, and it is since losing that as it gets closer towards you guys in Ashland. I know somebody was just coming about that. Hickory Flat, you guys are dealing with those heavy wind gusts, heavy rainfall, not quite dealing with hail, but damaging straight line winds. That is a concern here as we continue taking a look for you guys out there towards Tippah and Benton County, getting closer and closer towards Union and New Albany. In fact, let's do another track on this as we can give you guys the latest time. Let's go back towards our wind. And I will say it's not as stark of a difference as far as that line, that boundary as it was. That continues to be a good sign to see. So let's track that out here, kind of affecting you guys out here towards Ripley. Starting to feel those gusty conditions, and we'll go again around 50 miles an hour. I think the official one has it around 45, but we want to give you guys a heads up before it makes its way towards you guys, as y'all are still probably trying to get to and from y'all Saturday evening plans and change them. So for Cotton Hope, New Hope, Mako, that's right about now as it is on top of you guys. Enterprise at 6:30, same for Tiplersville, Bluff around 6:30, 6:31, Pumpkin Center and Walnut Creek as well for 6:31, and then we're dealing with Concord, Glenfield, Poolville, and Shari around 6:32, North Haven around 6:34, Marintown, Mitchell, and New Albany around 6:35, Pleasant Hill 6:36, and then we can change this here again to kind of talk about other cities that you guys will probably be able to distinguish a little bit easier here on the map. We're talking about New Albany, like we just mentioned, at 6:35, Ecru 6:47, Boonville 6:55, Guntown 6:56, Saltillo 7, and Tupelo 7:09. So still kind of right around the same track as what we were talking about earlier. Mantachie 7:13, Belmont 7:21, same for Fulton and Red Bay as it gets closer towards you guys out there in Alabama. I know some of you guys were commenting about the Alabama counties, starting to see some of this thunderstorm by the 7:21 time or 7:27 time frame. So still dealing with this severe thunderstorm warning with that destructive tag here in North Mississippi, affecting you guys out here in Tippah, Benton, Union, and Alcorn County, set to expire at 6:45 as 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts were reported, bringing some of that damaging, kind of just destructive threat to us here in North Mississippi. And for you guys pretty much in our northern counties as it continues to cross the state line, affect more and more of us here in our coverage area. That severe thunderstorm warning just north of you guys in Corinth and Alcorn County, not affecting you guys. I know a lot of people have been asking about Alcorn. Y'all are kind of sandwiched right in between, but I will say that these brighter returns continues to impress as far as not looking as intense as what it was. So we're hoping that this storm is starting to lose some of its strength. But it's still going to be kicking out, I mean, gusty conditions no matter where it's at. I mean, take a look. I mean, we're still seeing some of those brighter returns here with that latest scan. We can take a look at how heavy that's going to be. That'll kind of log back in. I think it may have been because it kind of overexceeded it, actually. Yeah, so we're going to be still talking about definitely over 30 out there towards Gravestown and Bethel. We're talking about gusty conditions kind of leaving Benton County, entering closer towards Tippah. We can still see kind of that stark boundary. Power outages are going to be a big concern as we're dealing with these damaging winds continuing to push further and further into North Mississippi. And we're dealing with more thunderstorm warnings continuing to get extended for you guys out there in Alcorn County. Y'all are now completely within that severe thunderstorm warning. So y'all are now no longer sandwiched between them. Y'all are dealing with some of these damaging winds and heavy rainfall making its way closer towards you guys. We can zoom in and kind of encompass most of this area as that continues to be the biggest concern. We're seeing some of that heavier precip and lightning start to ring out. And while we're taking a look, let's see if our New Albany camera, y'all are kind of right on the edge of some of those gusty winds starting to make its way closer towards you guys in Union. We're dealing with some of those darker clouds above, not quite raining yet for you guys, but definitely kind of more of those eerie sights getting closer and closer with some of that wind. And in fact, right when I was about to switch the camera, I think we're going to see some of that lightning out there in the distance. So still very energetic, disruptive. Let's go out there towards you guys in Alcorn. Somebody asked me about Ashland again. There's some of that lightning here with our Alcorn County. Is it bad? I would say you guys are getting those gusty conditions right about now as it continues to blow on through. Thankfully, starting to be on the back end of it as it moves on through. One thing I want to point out again, because some people were saying, hey, I'm in the red area when we were talking about wind. Red does not technically mean bad. It can be red or green. It's just showing us the direction the wind is going. When we see those brighter returns, that means we're just, dealing with just stronger winds. So let me show you what I mean by that here. Excuse me, let me not zoom out. We want to continue taking a look at this destructive severe thunderstorm warning. So if we're taking a look at it through our Memphis radar, we're seeing red and these brighter returns showing those hefty wind gusts. But if we take a look out of our Columbus radar as it's blowing through, we're dealing with some gusty winds, but this time in green. So green and red makes no difference. We're looking at kind of how bright these continue to be as damaging wind gusts continue to make their way further and further into North Mississippi. And our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard, he is in the studio helping us take a look at kind of just how destructive this thunderstorm continues to be. Gabe, what's the latest update you have for us?
Well, Caleb, phenomenal job tracking this storm. And as it continues to move into the area, you know, one of the things that it reported, and you see it flashing behind you, was the potential for this to be damaging. And we've seen quite a bit of damage, unfortunately, come out of this storm. Working on the power outages here behind the scenes, but I do want to say, just look at the view over there towards Potts Camp, looking towards Memphis. Let me see if I can move this down a little bit, but that's about as menacing a look as you can get on some of these storms as they move through northwest Mississippi. This was as it peaked in intensity on those winds, but still, you know, National Weather Service in Memphis noting that we're anywhere from 60 to 70 miles an hour. And why that matters, when you get in excess of 65 miles an hour, technically that's still the speed of an EF0 tornado. Now, rotating or straight line, we all go to shelter for tornado warnings. We all need to make sure to take this seriously. While it's not the red polygon, while it's not the red warning, it is still a notable, potentially damaging warning that we really need to take into consideration, get into those locations. We've had trees, unfortunately, reported on homes. Power outages continue to spike. Trees falling down quite a bit over there in Marshall County, DeSoto County, and now extending, as you mentioned, into Benton County and further on, Caleb. So continue to track this out, but just a few reports that I've been able to see behind the scenes. And if you have any pictures to report to us, send it in through the Mississippi Live Weather app, and we will forward that right along. But this continues to be the storm to watch as more severe thunderstorms remain possible throughout the rest of our evening.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And I mean, we're taking a look at our New Albany sky cam. Somebody pointed it out in the comments. I think they're watching it behind the scenes, and we're talking about gusty conditions. Take a second for once this nameplate gets removed here below me, but you can see the camera starting to shake. These trees were starting to shake below it. Let me clear this really quick. That way you guys can get a good visual here. We could actually see some of that dust get picked up closer and closer towards the lows. But in between shots, I was taking a look at this. I mean, just gusty conditions getting closer towards you guys out there in Union County and New Albany. We're going to see those trees continue to shake. I mean, this is destructive wind out here. So y'all make sure to continue to take cover and kind of continue to monitor this, take this seriously. Again, these are severe thunderstorm warnings, which I know maybe we prioritize tornado warnings over, but these could be just as impactful as we take a look at this destructive severe thunderstorm warning making its way into North Mississippi right about now. So we have dealt with a beautiful Saturday. We're ready to deal with a beautiful Sunday coming up here tomorrow, but we just have to deal with these strong stormy conditions first. We're getting closer and closer towards 6:45 when this warning is set to expire. Thankfully, we have not seen a warning go downstream just quite yet. That continues to be a positive, and hopefully we're not going to have to deal with too many more flashing severe thunderstorm warnings throughout our evening ahead, but still destructive straight line winds that can cause multiple power outages, damage to all our houses and trailers. I know you guys were asking about that. For you guys wondering whether or not trailers are safe, like our meteorologist Gabe Maynard mentioned, I mean, we could be talking about almost EF0 winds here, and that's where we're typically going towards our respective shelters or our storm shelters at home and whatever that we have available within our respective cities and locations. I would say that this is a storm that requires that, and we want to take this very seriously as it continues moving on through. Now, the good news and what I continue to see that's very impressive here is that the wind continues to be kind of dying on out, at least not as impressive as what it was with those brighter returns. Now it's still very gusty regardless, causing several power outages, which I know our meteorologist Gabe Manor, he's been taking a look at here behind the scenes. So we're going to have a report with that coming up here. But unfortunately, that's going to continue to climb throughout the rest of the evening, Gabe.
Yeah, and basically, if you live along I-22, that's what we're going to be dealing with. And as we look at that current outage report, we're looking specifically out of Northeast Mississippi EPA, as well as the North Central Electric Cooperative. So let me swap this over to. Appreciate that, Caleb. So here's a look at the outage map. And this is where, while an exact number on this map, I've not found one that has it, but I can at least tell you on poweroutage.us, we're reporting about 5,900 outages specifically in DeSoto County, and looking in Marshall County, we're 1,700. And those numbers tend to be a little bit behind. So potentially even 6,000 outages there in DeSoto County. And here's a look at that map. I mean, North Central Electric Co-op having several of these lightning bolts show up. Each of those, their own individual outages. Where those red ones are, that's where numerous outages are being reported. So going to be a busy night waiting on these storms to get through. And even as these trended across 22 and across North Mississippi, we've seen those outage numbers start to climb as well. I mean, look at the individual reports there, unfortunately, in the southern Marshall County, now moving into northwest Union County. So, Caleb, even as this moves through Union County, while it's a little bit weaker than what it was moving through DeSoto County, praise the Lord, it's a little bit weaker than 80-mile-an-hour winds, but it's still 60 miles an hour. This is your base severe thunderstorm warning that still is getting upwards of 50, 60 miles an hour, knocking down a few of those trees, knocking down a few of those power poles. So as we've seen with a few of these outages getting reported, adding to that probably as it moves through Union County. And one big note with this, and even the National Weather Service in Memphis talking about it, ice storm, ice storm, ice storm. A lot of folks still recovering from those impacts. And it's going to make those tree branches and those trees a little bit more susceptible to those winds. Pontotoc, when I was there the other day, they were talking about how there were branches that still had not fallen that these storms are knocking out. So that's what we're looking at too. Marshall County, DeSoto County, now into Union County, both areas hard hit by that ice storm. So unfortunately, it doesn't take as strong of winds to get those knocked down.
Well, we appreciate that, Gabe, for giving us that report. Unfortunately, that is a very good point, and that's something that our chief meteorologist, Matt Laubon, he's been discussing a lot throughout our storms throughout all of 2026, that the ice storm kind of was the setting stone as we endured that throughout January, and whatever it didn't knock down, it just made that much weaker heading into the rest of the year. And unfortunately, with us dealing with damaging and destructive wind gusts here, it just makes it that much easier for more limbs, more trees to start falling here, and that causes more and more outages. So we want to make sure to take this very, very seriously as this continues here at around 6:39 is the current time. This warning is set to expire around 6:45, so I'd be curious to see whether or not we see that get extended. I am pleased on the latest scans and how those continue to look like it's almost kind of being disorganized, kind of ripped apart, and hoping not to see another destructive tag kind of get sit downstream, but would not be surprised if we're still kind of dealing with those severe thunderstorm warnings further up north. And while we're kind of keeping it all in frame, I can zoom this out here for North Mississippi and for our coverage area. We're almost dealing with entirely all of our coverage area almost with those severe thunderstorm watches set to expire later on this evening. I know the initial batch was around 10 o'clock. Our Golden Triangle region got added to it. That is also set to expire at around 10, but we're dealing with several severe thunderstorm warnings. They did an excellent job issuing these watches earlier just to give you a heads up that we would be dealing with this throughout our evening hours. We're dealing with those further up north. Those are going to continue to work their way further on down, south, southeast in that direction. And we're dealing with some of these warnings. And as you can see here behind me with that flashing one, some a little bit stronger than the others. So that's why we've been keeping our eyes on it most prominently, as we don't really deal with those warnings here very consistently here in North Mississippi. They're a little bit on the rare side, and as they should be, because that way it wants to kind of re-emphasize how powerful that storm continues to be. So let's zoom back in on it. Of course, I know we're dealing with those severe thunderstorm warnings out there in the northern portion of the Delta. That is more wind and hail related, not quite as destructive as this one further up north. So let's continue covering it, as this one is hopefully set to expire within the next 4 minutes. So keeping you guys updated on that. Again, latest scans, really, really disorganized and kind of just falling apart. That continues to be an excellent sign, as we're seeing that not only with our reflectivity, but if we go take a look at it with our wind here, and we're taking a look at it with our Memphis radar. That's the one I want to look at here. Those brighter returns. I mean, just take a look at how prominent this was for you guys just north of Holly Springs. I would not be surprised to get several damage reports, unfortunately, starting to get that sent in probably here within the next few minutes. And we'll be talking about that a lot coming up later as these storms move on through. But as it continues digging further and further southeast, we're still dealing with some of those brighter returns, kind of some of those gusts, and just the radar not being able to comprehend just how gusty those are, but not quite as prominent as what it was. So destructive and impactful regardless, but we're not seeing it quite as strong as what it was. Now we're still dealing with some of those brighter areas here. If I were to kind of pixel these in for you guys, that's 84 miles an hour. Now, of course, we're getting a little bit further from the radar site, so it's picking up a little bit more aloft, but I would not be surprised if some of these are still making its way down towards the surface. Hopefully not quite as destructive as 84, as this was originally issued due to that, but we're still dealing with heavy, heavy wind gusts making its way down towards the surface, a little bit heavier further up aloft, and these storms continue to rumble on through. So let's do another storm track on this. It's been a little bit since we have, and it's kind of harder with how disorganized it is, kind of seeing that thin boundary of winds, which continues to be a good thing. But we'll do kind of another track on that here as it continues to make its way through. We'll kind of go kind of right on the outskirts of where we can start to expect some of that wind to continue rumbling and howling on through. And we'll move that here, kind of perfect, right around 50. Zoom this out so you guys can see. We're talking, and we'll just go ahead and bump this up. So bear with me here as we can give you the very latest. So we're talking about Jumpertown around 6:53, Boonville around 7 o'clock, Guntown 7:01, Saltillo 7:02, Marietta 7:09, Mantachie 7:16, Fulton 7:23, Belmont 6:28, Tremont and Red Bay around 7:33, and Vina around 7:44. So we're still dealing with that thunderstorm, hopefully set to expire within the next 2 to 3 minutes here, at least hopefully with that destructive tag. We have not seen anything get reported further on downstream at this moment, but we're still talking about several severe thunderstorm warnings further up north, northeast, and unfortunately that's going to continue to be the story as we continue monitoring that thunderstorm, Gabe.
Yeah, Caleb, just a few pictures being sent in from across the region. This is, and we'll kind of show these off. And if you have any reports of your own, send that in through the Mississippi Live Weather app, and we'll be happy to show those off and really relay that information to what folks are seeing across North Mississippi. So this is a look out of Dogtown. Again, this is in Lafayette County, submitted by Jamie, and you can see the structure of these storms even, I mean, miles north. We're talking 30, 40 miles north into Marshall County, where you're able to get a visual on that. Jamie probably having a drone. I do see it's a little bit above ground there. So appreciate that shot, but just showing the impressive structure with this storm. Kara, also in Lafayette County, submitting this photo through the Mississippi Live Weather app. Again, showing that leading shelf cloud where that gusty wind was a part of as those moved through Marshall County. And this is a look in Ingomar. This is southern Union County, but still some decent structure there. You do see a disorganized shelf, as Caleb was talking about, kind of getting a bit disorganized there on the southern side of the storm. And we talk about New Albany. I mean, that's a great shot of the storm. Unfortunately, it shows the decent structure of the storm that they're getting. So even in New Albany, while those storms are dying off compared to where they were earlier on, you're still getting some decent structure, and that's going to lead some of those strong damaging wind gusts. We're also getting reports from the North Mississippi Storm Chasers of some trees, reports in Marshall County of trees on homes, working to get the exact location of that. But James letting us know that the Red Cross volunteers have several reports in Marshall County of that. So that's never what we want to hear, but that's unfortunately what you deal with whenever you have a storm that could have up to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So Caleb, that's what we're going to continue to track. Fortunately, these winds have died off a little bit. Unfortunately, dying off from 80 miles an hour still means 60 miles an hour. And that's the case for a lot of locations. I do see a lot of yellow behind you indicating those severe thunderstorm warnings as things continue to fire up into those evening plans.
Yes, unfortunately, that continues to be the story, and we're now starting to hit 6:45, so hopefully not going to deal with that destructive tag warning for too much longer. But, I mean, even like you were talking about, I mean, 80 to 50, that's a significant difference and something that we would like to see continue. And there we go, right on cue at 6:45. Not dealing with it anymore. I know somebody else in the comments, he's still in good spirits, saying 80 definitely don't want to deal with, but 50, I think we can manage that. So still take it seriously, but I think we would love to see those numbers continue to decrease. Thankfully, that warning has since expired, so not quite dealing with it at the same level as what it was. So be curious to unfortunately see kind of the damage left behind, as Gabe was mentioning. I mean, that could be up to EF0 strength, which is how fast those winds continue to blow. So we're dealing with pretty much 2 severe thunderstorm warnings within our area, a third one just north of Tisch and northwestern Alabama. So we're dealing with this warning further out in the Delta, set to expire around 7 o'clock. That's for Tunica, Coahoma, Quitman, Panola and portions of Tallahatchie. That will expire around 7 o'clock. We'll go break that down here in just a second, but we're still dealing with another severe thunderstorm warning out here towards Benton, Tippah, Alcorn, portions of Tisch, and I believe even Prentice, yes, included with that. That is set to expire at around 7:15. So between 15 to 30 minutes for these next warnings to begin expiring here in North Mississippi. So we're going to continue to analyze that here. Let's go take a look at precip with our Memphis radar. We'll zoom in on this one out there in the Delta, as you guys have dealt with this. Thankfully, not dealing with too much here, at least not too many bright returns. We can take a look at that lightning here here in just a second, and we're going to let our Gabe Maynard come over here, continue analyzing these severe thunderstorm warnings out there in the Delta. So I'll let him take it away. I'll work on things behind the scenes real quick.
And Caleb, this is really why I was offering that to you, because I know that you've been tracking these storms for a decent chunk of time. So giving him a second to catch his breath, take a drink of water, and really continue the rest of the night, because unfortunately it does look like we're going to be dealing with these storms for an extended period of time. Let me swap it over so that way, you know, I'm a little bit taller than Caleb, so I have to add a few inches to that camera angle there. But yes, Caleb doing a great job tracking this out. I'm just giving him a little bit of a break. But let's go ahead and look at this storm that's tracking out there towards the Sledge community. Again, whenever this entered into Coahoma County, we were talking about some of that hail potentially coming out of this. And our Truefield Roofing hail swath, at least indicating that through the Lula and Birdie community, have not gotten confirmed reports there of hailstones, but at least that potential was there. And that continues even towards Horatio and towards Essex community. So let's zoom in there, and yeah, we're talking right there towards Essex, where we're getting some of that hail core reported. So as I put it on 3D mode real quick, I think this will be worth our while to kind of cut into this storm. Let us give a little bit of headroom there for those storm tops, and let's drag it out, and let's put it on let's go 30-minute loop here. I'm going to go 5 minutes there on the lapse rate. Let's watch these storm tops as they move into the area. So it looked a little bit higher earlier on, but you're getting that dense storm top that could have some of that hail a little bit more aloft. And I think the best way to do that, the best way to look at this storm, is cutting into it, and we'll be able to see some of those darker DBZs, kind of those colors that you're seeing behind me. And whenever they do get more towards purple or black or white, then that's indicating where we could get some of that small hail. And even on this latest scan, this is again over the Essex community, we're getting those purples a little bit more aloft. We're at about 20,000 feet there. So that hail, if there is any hail that will form on this, or that will form and fall to the surface, it is still looking like that's aloft and has not fallen just yet. So we will continue to watch this storm in particular as this tracks closer to Batesville. We should still have our camera in Batesville up and running. Now, fingers crossed, because lightning has definitely been a factor through this week and has knocked out a few of these cameras. But this is looking towards Caleb, I believe the cameras are over there. So if you want to check and make sure this is looking northwest, I would assume so based off of the dense rain shaft that you see back there. But either way, we are going to be tracking this storm right here. Did you get a confirmation on that?
This is looking north.
So directly north. So this would be, you look at that storm, this is still in that severe thunderstorm warning, but we need to, go back to there you go. That's the dense part of the rain shaft where we're getting the heaviest precipitation to fall. I'm wondering if that's even a tail cloud there, potentially aligning with this structure, but you're going to get a lot of lightning out of this, and that's going to add to some of those power outage numbers. Entergy going to be, say a prayer for your electric power associations, because they have been busy this week. We'll continue to be busy this evening and even into the overnight hours. So please thank your local EPA before this week is over, because they are doing a phenomenal job keeping the lights on and, more importantly, keeping that air conditioner running. So let's bring it back here to the storm. Let's track this out. And Caleb's been tracking about 45 to 50 miles an hour. Now that was with that initial storm closer to Union County. One thing I want to do is do an updated track to make sure these are following that same speed. So we're going to track this all the way back towards West Helena, where that hail core did form. And as that's continued towards the south and east, the core doesn't look as prominent. But as we've gone through the area, this has, I have about 40 miles an hour here on this storm. So let's track out 40 miles an hour towards the south and east. This would take it right through Batesville and eventually through Cortland. And then I know we have some folks there in Water Valley, Yallabusha County wondering, well, hey, what about me? Well, this will give you an update on those time frames. Let me take off the camera network and let me go ahead and talk about the latest on the timing here, just organizing things on screen, because I know it can be a lot to look at. So Bluff Springs were 6:55, Chapeltown 6:57, Batesville 7 o'clock, like we were just looking at a moment ago. Current time is 6:50, so that's here in about 10 minutes. Pope Community 7:06. The Splinter community 709, Hubbard Creek 714, Enid 715, the Lakeside community 719, and Union Hall by 722. So this is one of the severe thunderstorms that we're watching, basically lining up with Highway 3 and going to go across Highway 6 from Batesville all the way out there to the Marks community. So if you're traveling that this evening or going to any evening plans, please be mindful. Please do not drive through this storm. It is not smart. Even whenever I went out to Pontotoc the other day, I took 22 north and then traveled south to where I did not have to touch that storm. So do not get stuck in the middle of this storm, because that large hail can be impactful. That strong wind gust can be impactful as well. We're looking at both of those threats throughout our evening. Now let's go back to this damaging storm that we saw move through Marshall County, Benton County, and now into Tippah and Union County. I know my family in the path of this one, and they've been texting me behind the scenes, so I know that they're watching our Mississippi Live stream, our Mississippi Live weather stream, letting us know what's happening. Yeah, speaking of, there's my wife now, and her expert storm report. Oh, it is gusting. So that's your wind report from her, and the strong wind gust will still be a factor. Now, this is not as strong as what it once was as it moved through Marshall and Benton County, but I mean, those winds still getting, let's go to the brightest parts here, 50 miles an hour. That's right underneath the severe weather threshold. So one thing I want to note with this, we just talked about it. Ice storm territory. Union County got hit hard. So a lot of these trees are real susceptible to those wind gusts. New Albany already getting several of those power outages. Now, probably a lot of that due to lightning, but some of those could be due to the strong wind gusts, knocking down trees, knocking down power poles. So be watching for power outages, but also with some trees potentially falling, we want to stay away from the windows. So while this is not a tornado warning, and we will not have a tornado warning tonight, you can still have trees fall over and fall onto windows. I have seen situations in the past where folks were gathered by a door, gathered by a window. Tree falls right through it. Wind blows that glass out. Well, you're right there, exposed to Mother Nature, and can experience damage real close up. So we don't want that to happen. Kind of go to the living room or the interior part of your home just to kind of watch our coverage, especially while you do still have power. But once that power does go out, hey, we're on an app, so you're able to watch us at any point with our coverage. So that's what we're looking at towards the eastern Union County. Let's track out that strongest leading edge, and this is going to be closer to the Alpine community. This will be along parts of 348, Highway 30, entering into those exits along Highway 45, and you do see that does track a little bit closer to northern Lee County, and that could potentially get closer to Tupelo as well. So this one, Caleb was having a little bit earlier on, 45 miles an hour. I'm going to keep it about 45 there as it tracks towards the south and east. This is not severe, but we've seen damage come from this storm, so I do think it's still worth noting. And while we do see several communities in there, I want to make sure that we give as much of a heads up, because while a community might not be mentioned, you know the town that's close by. If you live in the Alpine community, well, hey, the New Albany area is about 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away. So that's how you can kind of gauge that. So Guntown, we're 701, Saltillo 703, Marietta 711, Mantachie 718, Fulton 726, Red Bay, Alabama. Hey, folks in Alabama, I know that you've been asking, hey, what about my area? There you go, 737. That's here within a half hour, at least a little above that half hour point. Tremont 738 and Vina by about 745 as well. This storm not severe, and we did see a moment ago. Let me go ahead and drag this back because I want to make sure I get that warning right. They have adjusted this warning further up north to even more up north into Alcorn County. We'll look at those cameras in just a moment, but the part that they're warning is actually this storm towards Middleton, Tennessee. It does have that southeast movement to it, so through Corinth, we're watching that for you. Eventually towards Iuka, we'll be watching that as well. Wind's still the primary factor with this. Let's look at that True Shield Roofing hail swath. I will say up towards Savannah, Tennessee, that's where you're talking about 1 inch hail, if not a little bit higher. Nixon, Maddox, out there towards Bruton Branch. So while we're not necessarily Tennessee live weather, we do have our friends there at Tennessee Valley Weather towards Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, tracking out those storms. So I encourage you guys to follow our digital weather network to tune in to what they're tracking up there. If you are tuning into our live stream here on Mississippi Live and you're up there towards central Tennessee, they'll have that for you, because that looks to be a pretty decent storm, at least rolling through that area. It's just a little bit outside of our radar, and our radar has a lot to track. So unfortunately, some of that energy not going to that storm in particular. But let's go ahead and look there, Lacey, Middleton, as it moves closer to Corinth. You know, I'm already seeing a lot of lightning in Corinth. That's a concern for me, because that will knock out power early. And that's before these storms ever move in. And I'm going to track this part out. You're going to get a lot of activity out ahead of this track here. So don't think this is when the storm's rolling through. This is when that potential hail moves through and those strong gusty winds. So that's through Middleton, Tennessee. But if we track that out long term, and I turned the wrong way there, we're talking towards the Gift community, 712, the New Hope community, not New Hope down there in Lowndes County, New Hope along the Tennessee state line, we're 712, towards the Gravel Hill, 713, Corinth, 716, so here in about 20 minutes or so, Liberty, 718, Farmington, 719, and then the Kendrick community by 722. So we're watching this into the next 45 minutes or so, so we're going to continue to monitor this one. But I do want to go back to this storm into Panola County, because that hail course still looks a little bit decent. You know, Caleb, let me know if we're getting any hail reports there behind the scenes. Watch the Mississippi Live weather app to see if we're potentially getting any. And power outage is still probably coming up, and I know that you've been looking at that. We'll come to you here in just a moment. But looking at the number of lightning strikes, those continue to come up there, 576 strikes. And there's your new warning all the way out through Panola County into Lafayette County and Yalobusha County. So out there towards Water Valley, eventually reaching your area, and this warning in place until 7:45. Let's do an updated track on this storm. And earlier on, we had it about 37, 38 miles an hour. And I think we're going to do exactly what we did last time and track this at about 40 miles an hour to give enough of a heads up as we go into the next half hour or so, and if this were to hold together. So there you're seeing Batesville 703. I mean, that's here in the next 5 minutes or so. So if you're in Batesville right now eating dinner or enjoying any Saturday night plans, stay there. Do not go on the roads. Do not try to travel through this. Do not try to outrun a storm. Please never do that. But if you are in Batesville, just monitor things, because here in the next 5 minutes or so, gusty winds and potentially some small hail moving towards you. Cortland 705, Splinter 706. We're seeing the Mount Olive community 710. As we see Eureka Springs 712, Wallace Creek 713, Hubbard Creek 714, Lakeside 719, Union Hall 719, Springdale 728, the Campground community 731, and Potlockney. I always love when that name gets to show up. I don't like that it's going through your area, but it's always a fun name, 734 there. So that's going to be going closer to Water Valley. I'm actually going to clear this up a little bit to make sure that Water Valley gets mentioned as well, because I do know we have a few folks out there watching us right now wondering, hey, what about me? Well, we have Batesville 703, Cortland 703 or 705 as well, Pope 706, Taylor 713, and Water Valley later on 734 if this were to hold together. I want to pull up the chat here, because I do see some folks saying, hey, they never look at YouTube chat. We do look at the chat, trust me, because we do want to know what reports you do have. Power out in the Ecru, Blue Springs area. That's going to be, we actually do have our camera in Blue Springs. We'll look at that here in just a moment. Power out in Myrtle. More communities there in Union County getting reports of that. Cater to Facebook. We got all the chats up there. In fact, YouTube is having more chats up there. So YouTube viewers, we watch you as well. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. Appreciate the biblical wisdom there. Always need to say a quick prayer before we see these storms moving on through. So Grenada watching for you. We'll get that track in just a moment. Anything I need to worry about living in Pope. So Pope, I mean, you see your track there, Pope 706. Let's talk about what you guys will be receiving. And let me pull this back full screen. I promise I'm still looking at chat. It's minimized here behind the scenes, but we'll pull it up as needed with any of those reports that you guys do submit. So send them in. But as we look at Pope, what are we getting out of this storm? Well, wind continues to be a big factor. In fact, let me make sure we're at our Memphis radar site. Let me go back here a few scans. It's had a decent signature to it. It still looks, we're still probably talking 50, 60 miles an hour, aren't we? I mean, that's ice storm territory once again. 30 miles an hour aloft, so probably mixing down to about 40 to 50 miles an hour. National Weather Service updating us on this as we move through the evening, and they continue that warning because it has produced quite a bit of power outages a little bit earlier on, so giving an update on that. You know, Caleb, speaking of power outages, let's go ahead and discuss that. I do see, oh my, yeah, I do see what you have there behind the scenes. You know, damage, unfortunately, going to be something we deal with through the evening as well, along with power outages and along with just exactly what you see behind you there. So Caleb, take it away.
Yes, unfortunate and fortunate kind of side with this story. This is the only damage picture that we have seen sent in through the Mississippi Live Weather app. Now, of course, there's probably going to be more damage out and about here in North Mississippi, but glad to see that it's not overwhelming just quite yet. They sent this in. This was outside of the Memphis region, and I was curious about the caption. They said possible tornado. We're not dealing with tornadoes today. This is just due to those straight line wind gusts that we are dealing with a bunch so far. That's why we saw that destructive thunderstorm warning get mentioned earlier. So I just really wanted to show up that picture that even though we're dealing with maybe just severe thunderstorm warnings, we see these a lot. We've seen them a lot this past week. They can still be destructive here, and that's what's causing many power outages here as those poles continue to get blown over. Ice storm in that territory that got hit hard in January, dealing with weaker trees, limbs that just quite not haven't fallen quite yet, dealing with some of those heavy wind gusts. So these continue to be unfortunate pictures that are sent in. And I will say, thankfully, that the only other pictures and reports that we're getting in are just some scary looking clouds, some shelf clouds, out in the distance. So thankfully not seeing much hail be reported. And I know you guys have done an excellent job in the past sending those in. So that continues to be a good thing that we're not seeing it today, meaning we're not seeing too many come in and reported. But wind, I think, continues to be our biggest threat. And we can even move this over to some of the outages I was just tracking out here towards the Marks community. That is this area highlighted completely in red almost. So entire area out there in Marks almost out of power. Northern portions of the Delta dealing with these outages, kind of whether that's in DeSoto County, a little bit more isolated, but Marks community and getting closer towards north of Clarksdale, kind of riding up Highway 61. You guys dealing with some of those outages. And I can switch this over here. Again, just dealing with several outages, Gabe, as we just continue to see this damaging wind move through North Mississippi.
And an unfortunate situation is unfolding as we speak. I'm going to bring it back full screen. And Caleb, a really great job kind of giving us an update on what we've been dealing with damage-wise and from those power outage reports. Let me take this back about 30 minutes or so, and you'll see the difference that I was watching behind the scenes. So those wind gusts a little bit duller earlier on. Watch how they brighten up into Lee County. Now, this is right outside of Tupelo. Caleb, if you can do so in a safe manner, might be worth taking a look outside if you're able to do so and maybe get some footage, but please be safe. But we're doing this because we're out ahead of this storm, maybe seeing how that outflow boundary is interacting, and he'll come right back in once it starts getting bad. Trust me, we learned on Monday how to go about this. So firsthand experience there. But what you also get here is look at the difference in reflectivity. The brighter returns, the reds, the oranges, those populating in a little bit more. What's happening here is the outflow boundary is feeding directly into this storm. So something that Caleb was talking about earlier on. Watch how this storm became outflow dominant for just a few moments there. Right there, that outflow boundary a little bit further out ahead from where those storms were happening. Well, it caught up. It redeveloped some activity further towards the Guntown area at this point, and we're seeing that build between Saltillo and Guntown, kind of that southern extent, and this will go all the way up into Boonville as well. Those gusty winds really starting to populate in, so this will be one to watch as we go further into the evening. And I do have, if you guys remember Lucas job shadowing with us this past Monday, he was up in Wheeler, sent me a video that we'll work to show you in a little bit, but that was sub-severe gust, and he's even reporting some trees and limbs knocked down due to those strong gusty winds. So let's bring it to the latest scan. I would not be shocked at all if there was a warning extended on this one, because those winds are starting to climb once again. We're 40 to 50 miles an hour, and that unfortunately continues to climb. Caleb is going to be live. I'm going to look for his shot there behind the scenes. I don't think I see him just yet. So once that is up, I'm going to toss to him so that way he can tell us a little bit about what he's seeing right outside. And luckily we should have good connection because we're on the Mississippi Live Wi-Fi. So, and that holds up pretty well. So let's bring it back here, and I'll continue to watch for him there behind the scenes. But right there, Guntown and Saltillo, and this is through the Birmingham Ridge community where we got a lot of damage from this past week. 55, 50, I think we're going to be climbing up to 60 miles an hour on this one. In fact, I see one pixel there. 58. So 58 miles an hour. That's severe thunderstorm threshold there. So this is going to be climbing in strength over those next couple of scans. Pulling up the chat here, making sure that none of our folks are getting any reports. I do see that the wind is blowing hard in Boonville. Yes, Boonville getting a lot. Wheeler, not too far away from Boonville if you're unfamiliar with the area. So again, we'll probably be getting some of those gustier winds. Boonville on the northern extent of this one shouldn't be the severe winds that we're talking about with the Baldwin to Saltillo region, but not too far away, I will say that. I'm trying to make sure the wind is bad in Baldwin too. Yeah, Baldwin kind of on the leading extent. Added a video on the app of Baldwin. We'll work to show that in just a moment. Loud thunder in Boonville, plenty of lightning with this setup. Will Oxford get anything? We'll jump out west in just a moment. I do think that this is going to be one to pay attention to, especially as this does get a little bit closer. And Caleb, I'm working to see if I see your live shot there, if you're watching there behind the scenes, and I am not seeing it behind me there. Oh, there it is. Got it up. Okay, we're going to toss to our meteorologist, Caleb Edelblut, who's live right outside the Mississippi Live studio watching these storms come in.
Yeah, Gabe, we're taking a look at these clouds continue to move in. Of course, doing so in a safe manner. We're out ahead of the storm, so we're not under it completely, but you can see kind of the scary looking clouds and almost the layers continue to make their way closer and closer. And I will point out that just to show you that it's not windy yet here in Tupelo. I mean, we're taking a look at the flag, not really blowing in the wind yet. And we've done several severe weather coverage where we can see that whipping out there in the background. So not quite there just completely. And I'll move it back towards the darker of course, it happened right to the left of the camera, but we're dealing with some flashes of lightning and kind of bolts making their way down to the ground. I will say that it is a good sign that we're not seeing it constant just completely yet, but I know disruptive and energized storms are going to continue to make their way closer and closer towards us here in Tupelo. I just actually got a notification. Lightning has been detected within 10 miles of work, and there we go. We just saw a bolt right there. So we're dealing with some of these energetic storms, a little bit disruptive, causing some of these outages, but thankfully, wind has not quite picked up, but we can definitely tell that that storm is coming closer and closer, Gabe. So I'll continue to monitor this as it gets closer, do so in a safe manner. But thankfully still out ahead of it, not really in the thick of it yet, but Lee County, especially the northern portions of this county, really going to start to feel that wind as it makes closer and closer towards us here in Mississippi. And you can really see the difference in the skyline, kind of the lighter skies where we're not dealing with those storms yet, and then where the storm is really pushing in, bringing those darker skies a little bit ahead of schedule for the overnight period ahead. So we're going to continue to keep our eyes on this one.